How to open a US bank account as a non-resident without an SSN in 2024. Hey guys, if you're new to the channel, I am James Baker. I'm an international tax consultant and I help clients open businesses in the US, bank accounts, payment processors, and generally grow their businesses in the US. And I also help people who are investing in the US market or want bank accounts and US dollar accounts, real estate, things in the US, just functionally get stuff done. And that's what I talk about on the channel, and that's what I'm talking about in this video. The most common question I get is, how do I open a bank account? And I still, to this day, am getting people saying that they can't open a bank account because they don't have a social security number. In general, you don't need a social security number to open a bank account in the US. You do need one to open a US bank account online at many of the US banks. Like if you try and open a Chase account online without a social security number, you can't even finish the application. And the social security number is a US tax ID for US residents. But if you're a non-resident, you wouldn't have one. So when we're talking about how to open an account, there's many different types of accounts. And I want to go over the different types of accounts so you can choose the right accounts and then go over the pros and cons of the different types of accounts. It's really important to know that as a non-resident, you can open US companies, US bank accounts, and have clients in the US and grow a big business as long as you're doing the services online without paying taxes in the US. So I want to reiterate that. I talk about that in more technical detail in other videos. But in this video, I'm just going to talk about the functional aspect of getting the bank accounts open. If you have questions about that, just comment below and I'll keep talking about this. And I'm always making videos about it. But first, we wanted to say, how are we going to choose this bank account? What do you need the bank account for? Do you want to have money in US dollars that you can just spend, like a regular checking account that you can spend? Do you want to be able to invoice clients? Do you want to invest funds in different brokerages and different things? From there, we're going to go to how to choose an account. So there's different types of banks. There's offshore US banks, which are like Puerto Rico banks. We have FV Bank, I think Face Bank, Zenith Bank. There's a number of different banks which are licensed in Puerto Rico. They don't generally have FDIC insurance, and they're kind of newer and, not always the number one option of people, but they are an option and they can work. I don't have a ton of experience working with these banks, but I know if you're in a high risk business like crypto or supplements and you can't get banking, these can potentially be good options. I do have clients that use FV Bank and have used them for crypto businesses for a long time, and it's been working out well. These banks generally have higher fees, they're harder to open, they don't have as good of support, potentially, and you have a little less access to it. But you can get a US dollar account in a US quasi US bank. Puerto Rico is a US territory, but they're not generally the same as other US banks that you're used to. So the offshore US banks are okay. They're probably not people's number one choice. And as the title of the video should say, you don't need a social security number to open these accounts. You generally just have to pay and either have enough personal information or have a company. That's like one option for you. That's generally not the number one option. The next thing is like low fee transfers. So if you're looking to just have money pass from one currency to another currency and using it as an intermediary for transferring funds, I would consider using a TransferWise account or AirWallex. They call these EMI, electronic monetary intermediaries. I think that's what it stands for. And these businesses basically aren't banks, but you can have multiple accounts in different currencies. And generally, my clients open up LLCs to have access to these accounts and to be able to receive and transmit funds in different currencies. And having a US LLC, again, doesn't mean you're paying taxes. It's just a company that you need to kind of help you get the account opened at these institutions. So TransferWise and AirWallex are two of the biggest, most popular ones that I've worked with, that are, once you set up, generally pretty easy to set up and very easy to use and transfer funds between currencies. Unfortunately, in the US, the Wise accounts don't come with debit cards, so you cannot get a debit card to spend money. So while it's great for receiving money and transferring it around different currencies, it's not really good for an everyday checking account. Now, there's the next option I want to get into, because I want to keep this video moving, is business bank accounts. So if you open an LLC, as I mentioned, in the US, you generally won't pay taxes in the US if you don't live here and you don't do business here. Do business means installing refrigerators, having a retail store, doing services physically in the US. If you're not doing that, then you generally don't have to pay taxes in the US on these LLCs. So you can open a US business and then open business bank accounts. The most common banks And the most preferred banks are going to be Mercury Bank. Mercury, and again, it's not a bank; it's a fintech company built on top of a bank with banking partners. And then Relay Financial. Again, it's the same. It's a fintech company built on top of it has a licensed bank, but it's a fintech company. These have FDIC insurance, so if the institution goes under and it collapses, the government guarantees up to a couple $1 million on these banks. So that's very high. Generally, I don't think there's any foreign transaction fees. You can open multiple accounts, get multiple debit cards, do all kinds of transfers with very low or no fees. They have credit card offerings at both of the banks, not banks, but at both, and I think they're some of the best. I personally use Relay Financial for my business banking, and I really enjoy it. Some of the issues with these are that they're hard to open if you don't have an actual business. So if you're just like, hey, I want a US account and I just don't do anything, or I'm like independently wealthy, it can be difficult. You might have to set up like a consulting business. Like Mercury's a little difficult if you don't have like a website, a company email, you don't have an address from a good, a low risk country or the US specifically. They can deny applications. They've been denying more recently than they have in the past, and there's no real appeal process. So if you have to apply a couple times or open different accounts, that's might be what you have to do. But that's great because we have that and we have Relay Financial. Now, Relay Fi is also a great option, but they changed their policies recently, and you need to either have a legitimate unused business address or in the US, or a residential address in the US. They prefer utility bills, but in terms of proof of address in the US, you can give them a sublease document showing that you live with your uncle. You have a lease document saying, oh, I have this lease agreement with my uncle. I live here at his house. And they'll still send the mail to the business address, but you'll have a US proof of address. It's a little nuanced. We're still testing it. But if you have someone in the US that you know as a family member, you could potentially use their address to get this application approved. You need the articles of organization, the EIN letter, your passport, this lease document showing that you live at this address, and then you'll need all of the company docs to have the same business address and to be consistent there. So if you do it that way, then you can get a Relay account open as well. Obviously, we helping our clients facilitate this and do this and make it happen, but those are some of the best options because you can spend the money on these cards anywhere in the world and have no foreign transaction fees, and they're just regular debit cards. You can take money out and you can control your funds 100%. Now, there is a new account that I want to share with you, apart from these business banks, again, not banks, that are great options. There is a new account that we're trying out and that we're having some success with, is opening a personal account online without traveling to the US at Charles Schwab. And Charles Schwab is one of the biggest financial institutions in the US. You can open an account at their bank as an international applicant and provide your foreign proof of address and open an account. They often prefer or request a larger deposit to fund the account upon opening, but it's not always required and you can get around it. And it's just a great option because it's one of the biggest institutions in the US. And then you can also transition that. They have a debit card that you can use internationally, pay no fees on. I'll try and find a link to put down below. I'm not like an affiliate of them or anything. They have great no fee debit cards, and it's a US bank account that you can open and keep funds in US dollars. And you don't need a social security number to open it. That's the whole point of this video, is none of these require a social security number. Now, the last options are the top 5 US banks. Like the big US banks, you generally need to do these in person. So this would be Chase, Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and then they have all these other banks like Truist, Ocean Bank, all these private banks and all these other banks. But the main banks are going to require you to have some kind of proof of address. So you can fly into the US, have your passport, have your sublease document at your uncle's house or your best friend's house, and I'm going to try and put together some kind of basic template that you guys can use, and maybe I'll make a separate video about that when I'm done with it. But once you get in, you can open a personal bank account. You just need a personal proof of address. And they used to accept phone bills, but the new thing is they don't seem to be accepting phone bills at most of the banks. I think Chase still does. So you can go into Chase with a T-Mobile address, at a T-Mobile bill at this address, and they'll accept it. But Bank of America is not accepting it anymore. I don't think Truist accepts it. So this lease document is going to be the best option. And it's kind of is a great option because you can kind of create it yourself, get it signed, and bring it in, and then have your proof of address, and they will open up the account for you, and that's a personal bank account. Now these accounts have Zelle. They generally have more fees. You generally have to fund it and put in like $1,000 or some money into these accounts to get them open, but they can work really great if that's what you're looking for. So, in summary, there's a lot of options for opening U.S. bank accounts. It's really awesome because as a non-resident, as someone outside the U.S., you can have these accounts and just pay no taxes on them. Now, there are issues if you're investing in U.S. real estate or investing in the stock market. Not issues, but potential pitfalls to be aware of. And there's other videos that I'll suggest for that. But if you need to get a hold of my team or you want us to walk through this with you, we have contacts at Chase Bank where we can help you get a Chase account open for your business without traveling to the U.S. That's something that's been very popular with our clients. That's an offering that we have on our website. You can look into that. It's a really great solution, especially for people from restricted countries. As long as you're, a resident of a country other than a restricted country, you can be a Pakistani and be a resident of France and still have and be able to get a Chase account open without traveling, and we can do that. So if you need help setting up LLCs, opening bank accounts, doing any of this stuff, I encourage you to schedule a free call with our team because this is what we're doing all the time and we have the most up-to-date information, and the calls are free if you want to schedule a free call with the team. So I encourage you to check that out. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope this was helpful for you and informational, and I wish you the best of luck. Thanks for being here.